The first sound is not the siren. It is the roar. A deafening metallic scream tears through the thin walls of the barracks. A sound felt in the teeth and the bones. It is a Messerschmitt Bf 109. Mere meters above the roof, its landing gear retracting as it climbs from the adjacent Luftwaffe airfield. The entire structure shudders. Wood groans. Flecks of frost fall from the ceiling onto the faces of the men below. They do not stir. They are used to it. But one man's eyes are already open. Mikhail lies rigid on the upper bunk. He is in his 30s, his face all sharp angles and weathered skin, a map of fatigue. As the fighter's engine fades, his own eyes perform the landing. His fingers, calloused and cracked, twitch minutely against the rough blanket, adjusting a phantom throttle, easing back a ghostly control column. He doesn't see the rotting ceiling. He sees the blur of the ground, the horizon steadying. A pilot without a plane is a heart without a beat. For him, every dawn is a funeral for his own hands. The siren erupts, a long, lancing wail that commands the body before the mind. The room explodes into a chaos of coughing, shuffling, the clatter of wooden bowls. Men move like automatons, their eyes hollow, their hope a distant, cold star. Mikhail's boots hit the frozen earth floor. Beside him, a younger man, Alexei, is already sitting up, his head cocked. Another engine coughs to life on the airfield. Alexei's eyes are closed. He listens. "Junkers Ju 88, Alexei murmurs, his voice a dry leaf. "Port outer cylinder is misfiring. A weak ignition lead. They'll miss it until the pre-flight magneto check." He opens his eyes. They are the eyes of a mechanic, an engineer. They see not the whole, but the moving parts, the points of failure. His hands, slender and permanently stained with grease even when clean, are his genius and his curse. The Germans use him for complex repairs on ground equipment. They think he is a docile tool. They do not see the library of schematics he is building in his mind. Outside in the pre-dawn gloom, they line up. The cold is a living thing, biting through thin uniforms. Searchlights from the watchtowers carve white scars through the mist, rising from the marshland beyond the fence. The third man stands a few bodies away. Ivan. He is not looking at the towers or the lights. He is watching the guards. His gaze is flat, analytical, like a biologist observing ants. He notes the one by the gate, Obergefreiter Keller, who always rubs his left thumb over his rifle stock 3 times before lighting his morning cigarette. He sees the sergeant, Feldwebel Brown, whose pace is 5 seconds slower today. A hangover, perhaps. Ivan was an intelligence officer. His battlefield is human routine, the tiny cracks in the armor of procedure. He breathes in patterns and exhales predictions. Their day is a study in deliberate, sanctioned cruelty. The work detail is for the airfield. They are beasts of burden, hauling heavy aluminum fuel drums from a truck to a storage depot. The drums are cold enough to sear the skin. Mikhail and Alexei strain under the weight, their breath pluming in ragged gasps. The airfield is a hive of arrogant activity. Mechanics in clean overalls swarm over sleek fighters. The guttural shout of German commands, the shriek of power tools, the rich, oily smell of aviation fuel. It is a world of violent perfection just beyond the barbed wire. And then he appears. Hauptfeldwebel Erwinsteiner walks with a relaxed, predatory grace. He is not a large man, but his presence is a vacuum that sucks the air from the space around him. His uniform is perfect. His boots gleam. He carries a pilot's leather map case. He was a flyer, shot down over the channel, grounded by a leg that healed wrong. Now he commands the camp's guard detail. He stops, lighting a cigarette, his eyes sweeping over the prisoners. His gaze lingers on Mikhail. Steiner knows. He sees the way Mikhail's body instinctively turns towards the scream of a diving Stuka, the way his shoulders square, as if bracing for G-forces. It amuses him. A caged eagle. He walks over, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stops in front of Mikhail, who is struggling to roll a drum off the truck bed. "You, the flyer," Steiner says in passable Russian. His voice is conversational, almost friendly. "The Focke-Wulf 191 there, the one with the yellow nose. A beautiful machine, no? Agile, powerful. It would eat your little I-16 for breakfast." Mikhail does not look at him. He focuses on the drum, his jaw a knot of granite. A vein pulses in his temple. Steiner exhales smoke. "Look at it. Go on." Slowly, Mikhail raises his head. The Focke-Wulf is a predator in repose, its lines sleek and deadly. For a second, the professional admiration is there, raw and undeniable, before it is swallowed by hatred. Steiner smiles, a thin, cold curve of the lips. He sees it all. It must be a special kind of hell, he muses. To understand the poetry of flight, to have danced with the clouds, and to end here, in the mud, carrying my fuel. He flicks his cigarette onto the drum Mikhail is holding. The ash scatters. "Carry on, Herr Flieger." He walks away, leaving a humiliation that burns hotter than any cigarette. The incident is a match dropped in tinder. It clarifies everything. This is not just captivity. It is a systematic grinding of their souls. Alexei watches, his clever hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Ivan's analytical eyes miss nothing. The cruelty, its precise application, the weakness in Steiner's need to exert it. The spark comes hours later. They are near the perimeter of the airfield, clearing debris, under the lazy watch of a young guard. The wind shifts, carrying voices from the main hangar, a large, reinforced structure with 2 armed Wehrmacht soldiers at its doors. A black Mercedes staff car purrs to a halt. 2 Luftwaffe officers emerge. One is a General Oberst, his chest a tapestry of medals. The other is a technical colonel, sharp-faced, gesturing with excitement. The prisoners are ghosts. The officers speak freely. The Project Phi 9 prototype is confirmed for tomorrow evening under maximum secrecy, the colonel says, tapping a folder. It will be in Hangar 3. The Reichsmarshal is personally invested. Its performance data is revolutionary. The General Oberst grunts. Security? Elite Luftwaffe security detachment, not the camp guards. No one enters. The ground crew will prep it the night before the demonstration for General Kessler. On Thursday, a closed flight. After that, the colonel allows himself a smile. The skies will belong to us in a new way. And the prisoners? They will handle the external cleaning, the fuel line connection, the dirty work. Under guns, of course, they see nothing, they understand nothing. The officers move inside. The information hangs in the cold air, vibrating with possibility. For a long minute, the 3 men work in silence, the weight of what they've heard settling on them like iron. Back in the fetid darkness of the barracks that night, the plan is born not in words, but in a shared, silent understanding that becomes a palpable force. Huddled together, their whispers are the softest scratch of steel on stone. Mikhail's voice is a low, fierce tremor. A prototype, unfamiliar systems, a demon we've never ridden. Alexei's eyes are luminous in the dark. It is just metal, wires, and fuel. It obeys laws. Laws I know. They will have us connect the fuel bowser. I will see the access panels, the primer system. I will know it. Ivan provides the skeleton of the impossible. The night before the demonstration, Wednesday, the airfield will be quieter. The security will be focused on the hangar itself, not the slaves who maintain it. Steiner, he is the variable. His pride is a blind spot. We must become part of the scenery, a tool he no longer notices. Mikhail stares into the blackness, seeing not the bunk above him, but a cockpit, lit by alien instruments. We get in. You show me the heart of the beast, Alexei. You get us a direction, Ivan, a heading, a name on a chart from a guard's hut, anything. And if it fails? Alexei breathes. Mikhail turns his head. In the faint light from a distant watchtower, his eyes are chips of glacial ice. Then we die inside that hangar. Not in this cage. We die as airmen, trying to touch the sky. Not as animals in the mud. The decision is made. It is not hope. It is a different, more powerful thing. A pure, focused intent. A cold fire. Outside, the rhythmic sweep of the searchlights continues. The growl of a night patrol aircraft echoes over the moor. They are insignificant. A secret has been planted in the heart of the enemy's fortress. The cage has just found its key. And the key is made of stolen fire, desperate genius, and a rage as cold and hard as the steel of a new propeller blade. The countdown has begun. The plan was a fragile crystal in their minds. Now they had to build a house of cards around it in the middle of a hurricane. Every breath, every glance, every motion became a calculated risk. The next morning, the airfield felt different. The air hummed with a subtle, anxious energy. New faces appeared, Luftwaffe security in crisp, distinctive uniforms, their eyes sharp, their movements brisk and impersonal. They cordoned off Hangar 3 with a palpable aura of forbidden importance. Mikhail, Alexei, and Ivan were assigned to a drainage ditch near the perimeter fence, far from the hangar. It was a deliberate move. Steiner watched them from the steps of the command hut, smoking, his gaze thoughtful. The humiliation of the previous day had not satisfied him. It had whetted his appetite. He saw the three as a puzzle, a distraction from the mundane cruelty of his duties. The first objective was simple: get reassigned to Hangar 3. It was Ivan who initiated the play. During a water break, Ivan doubled over, a violent, wet coughing fit racking his frame. He staggered, colliding with a heavy-set guard named Cole, spilling the man's canteen. Cole roared, shoving Ivan into the mud. "Swine! Filthy, clumsy swine!" Ivan wheezed apologies from the ground, his face a mask of pathetic fear. But his eyes, for a fraction of a second, met Alexei's. The signal was given. Alexei stepped forward, his posture hunched, voice trembling with manufactured deference. "Herr Unteroffizier, please. He is sick. The cold. In his lungs. He worked in the hangar last winter. The heat. It helped. If he gets weaker, he will be useless for any work." Cole scowled, wiping his tunic. The logic was crude but effective. A sick prisoner was a liability. Warmth might make him functional. It was a seed. They watered it all day. Ivan's cough became a constant, worrying rattle. By the afternoon, when Steiner made his rounds, the complaint had reached him. Steiner stood over Ivan, who shivered in the mud. "A dying man is of no use to the Reich," Steiner said, his voice devoid of empathy. "But a working one is." His eyes flicked to the distant, guarded hangar. "Perhaps the heat of the machines will bake the weakness out of you. Report to the hangar auxiliary detail tomorrow. All three of you, keep your friend upright." It was a victory, but it tasted of ash. They were being moved closer to the prize, but also deeper into Steiner's field of vision. The following day, they entered the belly of the beast. Hangar 3 was a cathedral of German engineering. The air was thick with the smells of dope, high-grade fuel, and ozone. In the center, under a shroud of heavy gray canvas, rested a shape that was unmistakably a wing, sleek and predatory even at rest. The Luftwaffe security guards stood at rigid attention around it, their fingers resting on the straps of their submachine guns. Their job was menial: clean the concrete floor, haul away packing crates, connect the heavy fuel lines from the Bowser truck under strict supervision. They were insects scurrying at the feet of gods. But Alexei's mind was a camera. As he dragged a crate, his eyes recorded everything: the type of fuel coupling, a quick-release high-pressure fitting he recognized, the location of the electrical ground power cart, the pattern of the access panels on the shrouded fuselage. Panels secured not with simple latches, but with flush-mounted Zeus fasteners, the kind used on high-speed aircraft. He saw a senior German mechanic, a Feldwebel with grease-stained hands, performing a check on the landing gear hydraulics. The man muttered to his assistant, "The priming sequence is longer on this one. 3 pumps of the hand primer, then engage the starter. The injectors are temperamental." Alexei committed it to memory. 3 pumps. Temperamental injectors. It was a tiny golden key. Mikhail's torture was different. He was so close he could feel the latent power radiating from the shrouded machine, a siren song that vibrated in his marrow. He watched the German pilots who occasionally strode through, their confident swagger, their clean flight suits. A fever began to burn in him, a dangerous mix of yearning and volcanic hatred. Once a pilot dropped a folded map, a Flugkart, from his pocket. It fluttered to the ground near Mikhail's broom. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The map showed a network of flight paths, navigational beacons, an airfield code, LT-4H. Mikhail's photographic memory snatched the image before a guard barked, and the pilot scooped it up with a laugh. LT-4H. It was a data point, a possible destination. Ivan's work was the most dangerous. He mapped the human terrain. The security shift change was at 2200 hours. The guard's relief was 5 minutes late, every time. The civilian night watchman, an older man named Klaus, had a ritual. He would brew a pot of ersatz coffee at 22:30 in a small anteroom, leaving his main post unattended for approximately 7 minutes. The padlock on the hangar's personnel door was a standard Abus model. Tough, but not impervious. He also studied Steiner. The Hauptfeldwebel developed a new habit. He would stand at the observation window of the command hut. Binoculars trained not on the camp, but on Hangar 3. And often, those binoculars would slowly pan downwards to settle on the 3 Soviet prisoners. It was not mere supervision. It was a hunt. Steiner sensed the shift in them, the focused intensity beneath their bowed heads. It intrigued and irritated him. Days bled into a tense rhythm. They stole fragments. A discarded hydraulic line schematic from a trash bin. Alexei palmed it, his heart hammering against his ribs. The timing of the perimeter patrol jeep's headlights sweeping past the back of the hangar. Every 47 minutes, Ivan counted. The fact that the prototype's canopy, once unshrouded, was a simple rear-hinged design, not a complex sliding mechanism. Their house of cards grew, trembling in the draft of fear. The breaking point came on Wednesday, the day before the demonstration. The canvas shroud was partially removed for final systems checks. The aircraft was revealed. It was like nothing they had ever seen. A Messerschmitt, but all wrong. Sleeker, meaner, with a nose that seemed all engine and a cockpit pushed far back. It was painted a dull, non-reflective gray. It looked fast, even standing still. Mikhail froze, his broom forgotten. His professional soul understood instantly. This was a quantum leap, a monster. Steiner chose that moment to enter the hangar. He didn't look at the plane. He walked straight up to Mikhail, following his gaze. "Ah," Steiner said softly. Standing so close, Mikhail could smell the starch on his collar. "You see it? The future. The Me-309. They say it can outrun the sun." He paused, letting the awe sink in. Then his voice dropped to a poisonous whisper. "It is a beauty, is it not? To think, you will spend tomorrow polishing its tires. The last thing your hands will touch before you die in this camp will be the landing gear of this masterpiece. There is a poetry in that, I think, for a failed pilot." The words were a physical blow. Mikhail's vision tunneled. The urge to turn and drive his fingers into Steiner's throat was a white-hot tsunami. He felt Alexei's tense stillness nearby, a silent plea for control. Mikhail forced his eyes down to the concrete. He gave a barely perceptible, defeated nod. Steiner smiled, satisfied. He had reasserted the natural order. He turned and left. That night, in the barracks, the atmosphere was electric with suppressed terror and resolve. The plan was complete. They had the how, the when, the fragile what. But they also had Steiner. "He knows," Ivan whispered, his voice a dry crackle. "Not the plan, but the intention. He smells rebellion. Tomorrow night, he will be watching." "Then we give him something else to watch," Mikhail said, his voice colder than the air. "A distraction. A fire in the west, while we strike in the east." Alexei uncurled his fist. In his palm lay a small, greasy bolt he had smuggled from the hangar. "For the fuel Bowser valve," he murmured. "If it is left slightly open, a slow leak, near the space heaters in the repair bay. It would take time. It would create chaos. It was reckless. It increased the risk exponentially. But it was their only answer to the new variable. A bored, intelligent predator who had them in his sights. The house of cards was built. It was intricate, detailed, and horrifyingly fragile. A single breath, a cough in the dark, a guard's changed routine, a moment of hesitation could bring it all crashing down. Tomorrow was Thursday, the day of the demonstration. The day of their death or their flight. Outside, the wind picked up, moaning through the barbed wire. It sounded like a warning and a promise. The day of the demonstration dawned brittle and clear. A perfect flying day. A cruel blue sky mockery. Every second was a taut wire huming with dread. The airfield buzzed with a frenetic, celebratory energy. Staff cars arrived. High-ranking officers in dress uniforms, their medals glittering in the low winter sun, milled near the hangar. The scent of anticipation was almost as thick as the fuel vapors. For Mikhail, Alexei, and Ivan, the work was a slow-motion nightmare. They were ghosts, polishing the concrete where the tow tractor would roll, wiping down the already spotless fuel Bowser, their bodies moving while their minds screamed. The prototype, now fully uncovered, stood gleaming under the hangar lights, a silent, predatory god awaiting its sacrifice. Steiner was everywhere, a shadow with eyes. He said nothing, just observed, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips. His presence was a cold pressure on the back of their necks. The demonstration was set for 1,500 hours. At 1400, the senior mechanics began the final pre-flight. The symphony of checks was a language Alexei understood perfectly. He heard the whine of the electrical starter motor turning the massive engine over, the cough, the sputter, then the sudden, earth-shaking roar as the Daimler-Benz engine ignited. The sound was monstrous, a deep-throated bellow that vibrated in their teeth and filled the hangar with a blast of hot, oily wind. It was the sound of their possible escape, and it was terrifying. The engine ran for 10 minutes. The German crew chief nodded in satisfaction, then shut it down. The sudden silence was deafening. The plane was declared ready. The officers drifted away for a pre-flight briefing and lunch. The hangar, for the first time all day, grew still. The elite security remained, but their posture slackened slightly. The climax was past. Now it was just waiting. This was the window. Ivan gave the signal, a slight, pained bend to pick up a non-existent tool. It was time. The distraction first. Alexei, sent to fetch a bucket of solvent, passed the bank of radiant space heaters used by the mechanics. As he fumbled with the bucket, his body shielding his hands, he performed a sleight of hand, born of desperation. The small, greasy bolt from his pocket was not just a bolt. One end had been meticulously sharpened on a concrete floor over countless nights. It was a crude, temporary shim. He dropped the bucket with a clatter, drawing a curse from a guard. As he knelt to gather it, his fingers brushed the main fuel line coupling on the Bowser truck parked nearby. With a push that took all his nerve, he inserted the sharpened end of the bolt between the coupling seal and the hose flange, creating a microscopic, almost invisible gap. A single fat drop of high-octane fuel swelled, hung, and fell onto the concrete with a soft tap. Then another. The slow, relentless leak began, the volatile fuel snaking its way along a barely perceptible groove in the floor, directly towards the glowing elements of the nearest space heater. It would take time, maybe 30 minutes, maybe less. Now, the real gamble. Their duty was to perform a final cleanup after the engine run. It gave them a reason to be near the aircraft. The main security detail stood at the hangar doors, bored, watching the officers' tents in the distance. The civilian night watchman Klaus was already in his anteroom, starting his coffee ritual early. Mikhail, with a rag in hand, moved towards the cockpit ladder, left attached to the fuselage. A guard stirred. "Halt! Was Max due?" Mikhail didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He pointed with a shaking, subservient hand at a greasy smudge on the pristine canopy glass. A smudge he had just made with his own thumb. He mimed cleaning. The guard, a young man weary of guarding an inert object, shrugged and looked away. The prisoner was cleaning. It was his job. This was it. The point of no return. Mikhail climbed 3 rungs of the ladder. His world shrank to the bubble of plexiglass. He wiped the smudge, his eyes drinking in the cockpit interior. It was alien. Instruments were arranged differently. The throttle quadrant was unfamiliar. A cold sweat instantly soaked his back. His pilot's mind, trained for this, began cross-referencing. Airspeed there, altimeter there, artificial horizon. Where is it? Panic, icy and sharp, lanced through him. He couldn't do it. It was impossible. Then from below, Alexei's voice, a strained whisper, as he pretended to wipe a landing gear strut. Primer is the red lever by your left knee. 3 pumps. Fuel valves are on the right wall panel. 3 toggle switches down. The main ignition is a black rotary switch above the throttle. The starter is the big red button next to it. Alexei had not just seen. He had memorized. He had reconstructed the cockpit from fragments, from glimpses, from the muttered words of mechanics. His whispered instructions were a lifeline thrown into a hurricane. Mikhail nodded, a tiny, imperceptible movement. He committed it to memory. Red lever, left knee, 3 pumps, right wall, 3 toggles, black rotary, red button. He climbed down, his legs weak. Now they had to hide. The hangar had a small storage loft for canvas covers and old parts, accessible by a rickety wooden ladder in the back. It was their only chance. They had to vanish before the fuel leak was discovered, and wait for the cover of night and the shift change. They drifted towards the back of the hangar one by one, carrying scraps of waste. Ivan went first, slipping up the ladder like a shadow. Then Alexei. Mikhail was last. He was 2 steps from the ladder when a voice cut through the dimness, calm and lethal. "Going somewhere, Herr Flieger?" Steiner. He stood blocking the path to the main door, but closer to the ladder than Mikhail. He was alone. He had shed his greatcoat. His hand rested casually on the pistol holster at his belt. His eyes were alight with cold triumph. He had waited for this. He had known. "I knew it," Steiner said, taking a slow step forward. "A rat does not look at a trap with curiosity. It looks at it with calculation. You have been calculating, all 3 of you. Where are your friends? Hiding?" He drew his Luger, the sound of the oiled mechanism horrifically loud in the vast space. "We will find them, and you will watch them hang before you join them." Mikhail's mind went blank, then crystal clear. The plan was ash. There was only this moment, this man. He saw the guard at the far door turn, alerted by Steiner's raised voice. He saw beyond Steiner the first flicker of orange light reflecting on polished metal. The fuel leak. The space heater. It was early. A low whump sounded from the far side of the hangar, followed by a sudden hungry roar. A tower of flame erupted around the Bowser truck, climbing the canvas hangar walls with terrifying speed. The guard shouted. Klaxons began to blare. Chaos, beautiful and terrible, was unleashed. Steiner flinched, his head snapping towards the fire for a split second. It was all Mikhail needed. He didn't charge. He moved with the desperate economy of a cornered animal. He snatched a long, heavy metal drift pin from a nearby tool cart and lunged, not at Steiner, but at the ladder, swinging the pin like a bat. It connected with the base of the wooden ladder with a sickening crack, splintering it. Steiner, reacting fast, fired. The shot was wild, screaming past Mikhail's ear and ricocheting off the metal fuselage of the prototype with a sharp spang. Mikhail dropped the pin and scrambled. Not away, towards the plane. The only cover was the massive landing gear and the shadow of the wing. Another shot. Chips of concrete stung his cheek. He dove behind the right main wheel, heart hammering against his ribs. Smoke began to fill the hangar, thick and black. The shouts were multiplying. Steiner was coming, a phantom advancing through the swirling gloom. Then, from above, a shadow fell. Ivan. He dropped from the storage loft, landing directly on Steiner's back. There was no fight, only a brutal, silent struggle for the gun. They fell to the floor, a tangle of limbs. Ivan was weaker, underfed. Steiner was strong, fueled by rage. He wrestled his pistol hand free. Mikhail saw it happen. He saw Steiner's arm rise, the barrel aiming at Ivan's head at point-blank range. There was no thought. Mikhail erupted from his hiding place. He didn't have a weapon. He had his body. He threw himself forward in a flying tackle, his shoulder connecting with Steiner's side just as the gun went off. The shot roared, deafening in the confined space. The bullet tore into the concrete floor. The three men were a knot of violence on the ground. Ivan scrambled, his hand finding the drift pin Mikhail had dropped. As Steiner tried to rise, Ivan brought the heavy steel pin down, not on his head, but on his gun hand. There was a crunch of bone. Steiner howled. The Luger skittered away into the smoke. Mikhail was on him, his hands around Steiner's throat. He saw the man's eyes wide with shock and pain, saw the reflection of the spreading fire in them. All the humiliation, the rage, the months in the mud, focused into the pressure of his thumbs. Steiner gagged, clawing at Mikhail's arms with his good hand. "Mikhail!" Ivan's voice was a raw gasp. He pointed. Through the smoke, figures were running towards them, guards, firefighters. The fire was a blessing and a curse. It hid them, but it also brought the entire airfield down upon them. This was not the plan. The plan was stealth, silence. The plan was dead. Now, it was a riot. A storm they had to ride. Mikhail released Steiner, who collapsed, choking. He looked at Ivan, then up at the cockpit of the gray monster looming over them. The firelight danced on its wings, making it seem alive, eager. The subtle theft had just become a desperate, bloody siege. "The plane!" Mikhail roared over the inferno's crackle. "Now!" They had minutes, maybe seconds. The Devil's Workshop was on fire, and they were stealing its greatest creation from the heart of the blaze. Chaos was their blanket. Thick, choking smoke boiled through Hangar 3, a black fog pierced by frantic shouts and the hellish orange glow of the fire. The world had shrunk to a few meters of visible space, filled with the acrid stench of burning fuel, rubber, and fear. Mikhail didn't think. He moved. He was on the cockpit ladder in 2 strides, hauling himself up. The plexiglass canopy was locked. A bolt of pure panic seized him. He fumbled along the frame, his smoke-stung eyes blurring. His fingers found a flush-mounted handle. He pulled. Nothing. He pushed. It gave way with a heavy clunk, and the canopy hissed upward on its hinges. The cockpit yawned open, a dark, intimidating maw. Behind him, Ivan was a silhouette, dragging the semi-conscious, moaning Steiner into the shadow of the landing gear. It was a brutal, pragmatic decision. A hostage, a shield, or just a body to buy them seconds. Alexei was already at the nose of the beast. He ignored the advancing inferno, his engineer's mind partitioning the terror. He saw the ground power cable still connected. He saw the external fuel line now severed and spraying a fine, dangerous mist near the flames. He lunged for the power cart, his hands flying over the controls. The electrical whine was lost in the roar of the fire, but a cluster of lights on the prototype's instrument panel, visible from the ground, flickered to life. The monster was receiving power. "Ignition!" Alexei screamed upwards, his voice tearing his throat. Mikhail threw himself into the cockpit. It was a straitjacket of alien technology. Dials, levers, switches in unfamiliar places, labeled in Gothic German script. The air was cold metal and oil. His heart was a frantic drum against his ribs. He couldn't breathe. He was drowning. Then, Alexei's voice cut through the static in his mind, a mantra from the hangar floor. "Red lever by your left knee. 3 pumps." His left hand shot down, found the lever. He pulled it once, a hiss, twice, the sound of fuel flowing 3 times. He felt the system pressurize. Fuel valves. Right wall. 3 toggles down. He clawed at the right side panel. 3 levers. He slammed them all down. A series of solid clunks resonated through the airframe. Black rotary switch above the throttle, then the big red button. His eyes found them. The black switch, the red button. They glowed in the reflected firelight like demonic eyes. Outside, the world was closing in. Shapes materialized from the smoke. Guards, their weapons raised. Muzzle flashes erupted. Bullets spanged and whined off the concrete and the heavy landing gear. Ivan crouched, using Steiner's body as cover, the Hauptfeldwebel's screams adding to the cacophony. "Mikhail!" Ivan bellowed, pure desperation. Mikhail's hand closed on the black rotary switch. He turned it. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the cockpit. The instrument panel glowed brighter. The beast was stirring from its slumber. He didn't pray. He didn't hope. He committed. He slammed his palm onto the big red starter button. For an eternity of 2 seconds, nothing happened. Only the whine of the starter motor grinding. It was failing. They were dead. Then, a cough. A violent mechanical shudder that rocked the entire airframe. Another cough. A sputter of raw, unburned fuel from the exhausts. And then, ignition. The world exploded into sound. The Daimler-Benz engine didn't start. It awakened. A deep, guttural, earth-rending roar that drowned out the fire, the shouts, the gunfire. It was the sound of contained volcanic fury. The entire aircraft trembled. Hot exhaust blasted the concrete, swirling the smoke into tornadoes. The propeller became a blinding circular disk of silver light. In the cockpit, Mikhail was thrown back into the seat by the raw vibration. The noise was a physical wall. He couldn't hear his own thoughts. He saw Alexei, still on the ground, waving frantically, pointing forward, then making a slashing motion across his throat. The chocks. The wheel chocks. Mikhail's eyes scanned the controls. He saw a lever labeled Bremsen, brakes. He stomped on the rudder pedals, feeling the hydraulic pressure. He had no time. He shoved the throttle forward a centimeter. The engine's roar deepened, became hungrier. The aircraft strained against its blocks. Alexei, in an act of suicidal bravery, darted from cover into the blinding prop wash. He kicked at the wooden chocks in front of the wheels. One flew away, the other jammed. A guard took aim. Ivan shoved Steiner forward. The shot went wide. Alexei bent, his hands tearing at the wedged wood, ignoring the bullets cracking around him. With a final primal heave, he pulled it free and rolled away. The beast was loose. Mikhail released the brakes and fed in more throttle. The Mi-309 began to roll forward, slowly, inexorably, out of the smoke and fire of its hangar and into the cold twilight of the airfield. They were not clear. They were naked on a brightly lit stage of chaos. The airfield was now a swarm of furious activity. Sirens wailed from all directions. A truck screeched to a halt, disgorging soldiers. From the control tower, a blinding spotlight lanced down, pinning the stolen fighter in its beam. Mikhail's training took over, a cold automatic layer over the panic. He needed speed. He needed the sky. He pushed the throttle further. The engine's roar became a scream. The aircraft accelerated, bumping wildly on the concrete. He fought the controls. They were heavy, sensitive, alive. This was not his docile U-2. This was a thoroughbred stallion, and it was trying to kill him. A machine gun opened up from a guard post. Tracers streaked past the canopy. Brilliant green lines in the dusk. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Something sparked off the right wingtip. A web of cracks appeared on the edge of the canopy plexiglass. Mikhail flinched, hunching his shoulders. He saw the main runway ahead, a long black ribbon. He angled towards it. A vehicle, a Kubelwagen, swerved onto the runway, trying to block him. Mikhail didn't swerve. He pushed the throttle to the wall. The Mi-309 surged forward with a sudden, terrifying burst of acceleration that slammed him into the seat. The speed was unbelievable. The Kubelwagen loomed, men spilling out. At the last possible second, Mikhail pulled back on the stick, just a fraction. The aircraft didn't jump. It levitated. The wheels left the ground for a second, then slammed back down, clearing the vehicle by inches. The men below were thrown aside by the hurricane of the prop wash. He was on the runway. This was it. He pulled the stick back, steadily, feeling for the sweet spot. The nose rose. The bumping stopped. The world tilted. And then, the sound changed. The roar of the engine was joined by a new sound. The whisper of the wind over the wings, clean and pure. The crushing weight of the ground fell away. The tracer fire fell away, falling short, becoming silent, distant fireflies. They were airborne. The relief was a tsunami that almost drowned him. For a second, his vision swam. He was flying. He was flying. The elation lasted precisely 3 heartbeats. A new, more professional danger announced itself. From the dispersals at the far end of the field, 2 green-nosed Bf-109s were already taxiing swiftly, their own engines howling. The Luftwaffe was scrambling its alert flight. He had stolen a prototype, but he was still in a cage of German airspace, and 2 very angry, very skilled jailers were now coming for him. And inside the cockpit, the real battle began. The battle with the machine. The altimeter was spinning, but was it in meters or feet? The compass was swinging wildly. He needed a heading. East. Just fly east. He banked the aircraft, the unfamiliar controls responding with a razor's edge sensitivity. The horizon spun sickeningly. He overcorrected. The plane wobbled, a stall warning burbling at the edge of his hearing. He was a concert pianist, shoved onto a pipe organ. He was flying a demon he did not understand into the dark, with wolves already on his scent. The stolen beast was awake, and it was furious. And it was all he had. The sky was no sanctuary. It was a vast, darkening chamber of lethal geometry. The 2 Bf-109s were not chasing, they were intercepting. They climbed with the vengeful grace of hornets, cutting the angle, their silhouettes growing rapidly from specks to deadly shapes in his mirror. The stolen Mi-309 thundered through the twilight, a gray ghost, but it was a ghost with a monstrous roar and a fiery exhaust trail painting a neon sign across the heavens. Inside the cockpit, Mikhail was a man split in 2. One part was pure animal, screaming with the vibration, heart slamming against his ribs, sweat stinging his eyes despite the freezing air leaking through the bullet-cracked canopy. The other part was the pilot, cold, distant, assessing. His hands, slick on the controls, fought the machine's will. It wanted to fly fast and straight. He needed to fly low and evasive. He shoved the stick forward. The horizon vanished, replaced by the rushing, blurred tapestry of frozen forest and snow-dusted fields. The altimeter unwound in a dizzying spin. 200 meters. 150. The treetops became individual claws reaching for him. The first attacks came in a blistering rush. A rattle like hail on a tin roof. Tracers, vivid green and murderous, stitched the air where his wings had been a half-second before. He hadn't seen them coming. He'd felt it. A primal flinch that jerked the stick left. The 109 screamed over him, their slipstream buffeting the heavier prototype like a child's toy. His mind raced, calculations firing on instinct, They were faster in the turn. He had raw speed, maybe. And the machine, he didn't know its soul. He only had Alexei's words and the screaming feedback in his hands. One of the German pilots, overconfident, overshot his firing pass. Mikhail saw the black crosses on the wings fill his cracked canopy. A target. His thumb found the weapon trigger on the stick. He squeezed. Nothing. A hollow click. The guns were safetied, unloaded, disconnected. A state secret on the ground, a death sentence in the air. A raw, guttural sound of frustration tore from his throat. He was a tiger, with filed teeth. The second 109 came from the side, cannons blinking. Mikhail hauled the stick back, riding a wall of G-force that pressed him into the seat, graying his vision. The cannon shells exploded in the empty space beneath his fuselage. The shock wave rattled the airframe. A warning light flashed red on the panel, hydraulic pressure dropping. The controls grew heavier. He was losing the beast. And he was lost. The landscape below was a featureless, frozen hell. No landmarks, no rivers, no lights. Just the endless, hostile dark of occupied territory. The compass spun uselessly, affected by the plane's own steel bones. Ivan's stolen heading, LT for us, was just a memory. He was flying blind. Then he saw it. A thin, meandering scar of black on white. A frozen river. It ran roughly east. It was a thread. He clung to it, letting the river guide him, flying so low his prop wash churned the snow on the banks into phantom storms. The 109s regrouped, smarter now. They took turns making slashing attacks, hurting him, draining his speed, waiting for him to make a mistake. A cannon shell found its mark. A deafening crump from the left wing. The aircraft yawed violently, trying to spin. Mikhail stomped on the right rudder, muscles burning, fighting the asymmetry. A shuddering vibration consumed the airframe. A piece of the wing surface tore free, fluttering away like a dying bird. He was wounded. Slowing. The river was his only lifeline. A new terror bloomed on the horizon ahead. Flashes. Dozens of them. Silent and bright on the ground. Then seconds later, the sky around him erupted in black, oily flowers of smoke. Flak. He had flown straight into a German anti-aircraft battery guarding a rear area depot. The world became a concussive nightmare. The air itself seemed to detonate. Shrapnel tinged and thunked against the fuselage. A piece pierced the canopy, missing his head by centimeters, leaving a jagged hole that screamed with icy wind. He was caught in a box, hunters behind, a wall of fire ahead. There was only one way, through. He pointed the nose of the shuddering, bleeding machine directly at the heart of the flak bursts. It was insane. It was the only thing they wouldn't expect. He pushed the throttle through the gate into emergency power. The engine's roar became a shriek of agony. The airspeed indicator quivered towards a number he didn't dare read. He flew into the storm. The explosions were so close he felt the heat. The plane bucked and dropped in the turbulent air. A red light joined the chorus on the panel. Engine temperature critical. He was killing the prototype, burning out the very masterpiece he had stolen. And then he was through. The flak fell away behind. The river widened. And ahead, in the deepening gloom, he saw a new constellation of flashes. Smaller, sharper, coming from the ground towards the west. Rifle fire, tracer arcs in a different pattern, the front line. But the 109s were still there. One last, desperate pass. The lead German, seeing his prey limping towards the frontier, lined up for a killing shot. Mikhail saw him in the mirror, steadying. He had no speed left to dodge. No guns to answer with. From below, a new line of tracers lanced upward, not at him, but at his pursuer. Crude, inaccurate, from a Soviet infantry position. But it was enough. The German pilot wavered, breaking off for an instant. It was the instant Mikhail needed. The river beneath him ended, merging into a wider, scarred no-man's land of shell craters and burnt trees. He was across. He was over the lines. The elation was gutted before it could form. A new frantic staccato of machine gun fire erupted from below. Soviet anti-aircraft guns, seeing a lone, unfamiliar German aircraft screaming low over their trenches, opened up. To them, he was the enemy. The final, cruel irony. A round punched through the floor between his legs, showering him with splinters of metal and insulation. Another shattered the already cracked canopy entirely. The blast of freezing, smoky air was a physical blow. He was hit. The engine's scream faltered, coughed. A plume of thick black smoke poured from the exhausts. The controls went dead in his hands for a heart-stopping second, then came back, sluggish and dying. He had no instruments, no canopy. He was deaf from the engine and the wind. He was freezing. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts. The plane was a dying animal. A flat, snow-covered field appeared ahead, pockmarked by artillery. It was all there was. He cut the throttle. The silence was sudden and terrifying. The only sound was the mournful whistle of wind through the broken cockpit. He pulled back on the dead stick, trying to keep the nose up, riding the last breath of speed. The ground rushed up. He flared. The impact was a colossal, wrenching violence. The landing gear, damaged, sheared off instantly. The belly of the aircraft slammed into the frozen earth, shrieking, tearing, shedding metal in a long, spark-showered scar across the snow. It plowed forward, grinding to a halt in a cloud of ice crystals and dirt, tilted grotesquely on its shattered side. Silence. A deep, ringing, absolute silence, broken only by the ping of cooling metal and the hiss of escaping steam. Mikhail was alive, strapped in, hanging sideways in his harness. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye, blurring his vision. He tasted copper and fuel. He fumbled with numb fingers, releasing the harness, collapsing onto the side wall of the cockpit. Move. He had to move. He crawled out through the jagged hole where the canopy had been, falling into the deep, shocking cold of the snow. He tried to stand, fell, stood again on shaking legs. He turned and looked. The machine that had carried him from hell lay broken, its sleek lines ruined, smoke curling from its guts into the still air. It was a corpse. Then, voices, shouts in Russian. Figures emerged from the twilight, shadows in long coats, rifles leveled. They moved cautiously, surrounding the wreck, their faces hard, suspicious. They saw a man in tattered, smoke-stained German work overalls clambering from a state-of-the-art German fighter. Mikhail raised his empty, trembling hands. His voice, when it came, was a raw, broken thing torn by the wind and the strain. "Ne stреляйте," he croaked. "Svoi, my svoi." The soldiers advanced, their bayonets fixed, disbelief etched on their young, frost-bitten faces. One, a sergeant, stepped closer, his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he barked. "What is this?" Mikhail took a shuddering breath. He looked past the rifles, past the wreck, to the vast, dark sky in the west, from where he had come. He looked back at the sergeant, and in his blue, exhausted eyes, there was a light that had not been there for a very long time. A light that was not just the reflection of the snow. "Starshine Lieutenant Mikhail Vasin," he said, the words a vow on the frozen air. "Voyeno-vozdushnie sili. I have come home."